Our topic today is going to be on dripping and adapting content on the CYPHER platform. So ways to make your content more engaging and personalized to learners, as well as controlling the flow of the content as you go through a course. So the main topics that we'll be talking about today are dripping content over time. So that'll be an automated process to automatically release content on a daily basis, hourly basis, whatever the case may be, to control the flow of content, how to lock and unlock individual content, how to hide content from particular users, and then finally adapting your content based on assessments. So creating that true adaptive learning experience. So those will be the topics that we cover, and we're going to jump right in and take a look first off at content dripping. So the approach that I'm looking at for the content drip is to think of it as something like a course for new hires into your organization, where you have a 2-week new hire course and you try to schedule certain topics for certain days, some of it self-paced. So you want to make sure that your learners aren't getting too far ahead of you as you go through the content. So I'm going to go into one of our courses here, which is going to be Illustrator for Beginners. And you can see here, I've got 3 different course modules. So perhaps this is a 3-day course, with day 1 being an introduction, day 2 being a basic Illustrator 101, and day 3 being a focus on vector graphics. So when I do this, I want to make sure that I can set this up so that content is released on a timely basis. So I'm going to go into the administrative section here and go into modules. And when I do that, we have a feature right here for dripping content. So this is the automated release of content on a schedule. So I'm going to enable that for this particular course. And when you do this, you have the option to control the messaging that goes out. Are there notifications that are sent to the users to notify them that content has been unlocked for them? So it can be set up with a canned message that will just provide the basic information. It can be done with a custom message, so you can completely control the content and the look and feel of what goes in there. Or you can send it out with no notification. So perhaps if you're using this as part of a blended learning activity and you just want those lessons to unlock so they're ready for the instructor to direct them to the next day, you might want no notification to go out. Below this, on any of those 3 options, I have the ability to select when that locking and unlocking happens. So this is from the time that the learner starts the course and enrolls in the course. So we can set this to unlock every day, and each day the next module will then unlock for them as they go through that content. When I save that, I can see everything is down here. The first module is unlocked immediately. Others are unlocked every 1 day. I can always edit that and change that if I need to, as I see how the interactions go. But that creates that automated flow of content to give you a progression through your content. The other aspect of this is looking at unlocking and locking content manually. So we're going to disable that now so we can control everything in this course. Stay in the same course module. And now, instead of being in the admin module section, we're going to go over to completion. So the first thing that we can look at is requiring modules to be completed in order, as well as requiring sections to be completed in order. Automatically, that's going to lock all of the content beyond the first module for me. So if I come down to our module section, and I'm going to view this as a learner, you can see that I now have a start button and all of the other modules are locked by default. If I go through this first module, and I'm just going to skip through this. It's going to make me watch the video, so we're going to skip that for the moment. So as we go through, it's just going to unlock those modules for me. So I'm going to log back out of the learner view, so I'm back into the instructor view. So that is now all manually or automatically locked for me based on the flow of the content through everything. I can also go in now back into our administration side of things. We have controls to block which modules are visible from that based on their locking and unlocking. Or I can go into an individual module and we'll go into that second module and there is a locking option here. So by default, I can force a module to be locked or I can force it to be unlocked. I'll also be able to go in and do that for specific users. So if you want to control locking and unlocking for, again, a blended learning activity, and you want to release modules manually to someone, I could select to add all of these learners over, and when these learners come into this course, it will be locked, and then I can, or sorry, it will be unlocked, and then I can remove them and force the locking right now. So that can all be controlled on a manual basis. The other thing that we can always do is also control these with automations. So for example, when module 2 is completed, we can use the built-in automation and action portfolio within the CYPHER platform to generate changes in that future content. So in this case, I can choose when this particular module is completed, I want to unlock another module. So that can be done immediately, same as we saw with the drip content. I have the same options for notifications, whether it's canned notifications, custom notifications, or none, and when that happens. So same thing again as drip content. I can choose that it happens immediately now, or I can specify the time or specify a duration. So if you've completed module 2, same functionality as drip content, I can say a day from now, this next module will unlock for you. So it's there to help control that learning experience, make sure you're able to meet your learning needs and be able to adapt to things like the forgetting curve and have another module that is a reminder and refresher on the content that unlocks 3 days later for the person to be able to review the information that's in their content.
Mark, we have a question asking if we could feed content based on an exact date for each lesson.
So the question would be are we talking about the unlock or the dripping of content? So it unlocks on a particular date?
Yeah.
So that would be done with the automations. It wouldn't work on the drip content because that is specifically designed for a time period. However, if I go in here, the same concept that I just looked at for the completion action, I'm going to go into the course's enrollment section and add an enrollment action. So at that point, I would have all of my additional modules locked by default. And I'm going to go in and choose an action on enrollment to unlock a module. And so we'll unlock Illustrator 101. And I'm going to enter in a specified time. So if I want that to unlock next Wednesday, and I'm going to have it unlock at noon for the local time for me. And I'm going to click on done. So now that will happen at that specified time versus on a duration based. And the same thing, once you've created that action, it's now down here. I can always edit that if I need to change the date or restrict something. And if that course does have the locked module, I can still come in, and if I have a particular learner that I need to have it unlocked for earlier or later, I can manually do that to override the time stamp that's there. All right, so next up, as we look at all of the locking and unlocking, the other aspect of control over the content is visibility. And for this, we're going to switch courses up and we're going to go to our design patterns course. And in this case, we're going to look at how to hide content based on your user group. So in this particular course, I have in this pre-assessment section, I have some assessments, and then later on, I have more assessments. So there's an assessment on fonts. And what I want to be able to do is to restrict who is actually given this assessment. Some of my users are just in this course for informational and they want to learn a little bit about typography basics. But I have a specific group of learners that are our creative design team. So I want to be able to only give this assessment to the creative design team. So since I'm in this assessment now for fonts, I can go in and from our tabs here at the top, choose visibility. Same as we saw with locking, I can control it at an individual user basis. But what's much easier is to use the filters that are built into our platform in many different areas. So I can choose to add a filter to this particular section. I can use predefined filters that I've used elsewhere in the platform already to save myself some time, but I'm going to go ahead and choose to add a filter in. And when I do that, I'm allowed to choose what user information I want to base this on. And that can be any of the account fields that are in your platform. So if you've created custom fields, for example, based on a department name, you can access that field here. You are also able to access some of the other features of the platform this way. So group is there, which is what I want to use. If you're using organizations, you can use that, of course, as well. There's also opportunities to use it with e-commerce. So if you followed some of our previous sessions where we went over e-commerce functionality, we showed how to build packages that include multiple courses and those sorts of items. But you can also then use that and whether they purchased a particular subscription to say, it only show this module if they purchase this subscription. A great example here would be if you run a certification program and you have an additional package that includes practice exams. You could add additional exams in each of the courses that are only available to them if they've purchased that practice exam package. But again, in our case, we're going to use the group because that is what we have in this platform. So select my group. I select that I want it to be them to be in a particular group. I can also do the inverse and have it not in a particular group. And again, we took a look, we're looking at the creative design team. As this list gets longer, I can of course search to find items within the list, but we only have a few, so it's pretty easy to find this time. I add that in and we're basically set. I can continue to add more groups if I wanted to. I could also add additional criteria if I wanted to specify that it was in the creative design team and a particular organization. I can create multiple criteria that go there. So once I've done this, I click on save. So now this font assessment is only going to be displayed if the learner is in that particular group of the creative design team. The other aspect of visibility, again, is that manual creation and the ability to do this with automation. So rather than looking at manual automations, we're going to look at how to do the automation of visibility based off of an assessment. So as I mentioned, I have another assessment up here, which is a pre-assessment, but common learning tactic to have an assessment of someone's current knowledge base and then be able to provide prescriptive learning based on what their current level of knowledge is and eliminate certain topics that they may already be familiar with. So if I come into this assessment that was created for the history of graphic design, which we can see here is our next module after this, I've got a basic assessment. It's going to generate 3 questions. It has a one-time attempt. So a learner gets 1 attempt to complete this assessment. And if they pass the assessment, we want to hide the module, the history of graphic design. If they don't, that module will be visible to them. So I am going to go over here to our tabs and go to one of the ones that's not quite visible yet and go to score rules. When I do that, I'm able to add automations based on the score that's achieved in this assessment. So I can add a rule here, and I want to create this if the score is above or equal to 70%. So in the case of a 3-question assessment, that's going to be you're allowed to miss no questions. 66% would be 2. So I could also force it to just be equals 100, but 70 is generally considered to be passing. So this gives me flexibility if I choose to add more questions in the future. Once I've set that assessment role or the assessment score rule, I can now add the action. So add the automation of what happens if someone passes this assessment. One of the important things here is if you go into your platform and you don't see all of these options, you need to make sure you have adaptive content installed from your App Center. That functionality adds in all of this ability based on assessments and gives me a full selection of rules that I can add in. So what I want to do is, if they passed it, I want to hide that module. So I choose the hide module action. I don't want the learner to necessarily see everything that's going on there. So I'm going to choose to hide the module, the history of graphic design. Same as before, we can also apply this retroactively. So people that are already taking the course and have already gone through it, we can apply that to them as well. I'm just going to leave that as it is at the moment. We also have the ability to add filters to this. So as we just did to hide the other module, we could also say we only want to hide the history of graphic design if they're on the creative design team and pass the assessment. So you can add all of those filters in as well to create even more flexibility in how you adapt content to your learner needs. So I'm going to remove that just to make sure we have a consistent experience when we take a look at this. So I go ahead and save that, and we're now set to hide the module if the score is greater than equal to 70%. So let's take a look at how that functions for a learner. So I'm going to choose one of my learners who has not yet been through this course, and I'm going to log in as that learner. And now if I go to courses and Tony is going to go through design patterns, we have our general pop-ups that are automatically happening here. And this course, as we saw earlier, is set up for the requirement that modules be completed in order. So you can see that all of these modules below are locked. My only option is to start the course from module number 1. And when I do that, I get the basic course that starts out here. There's a video here. I'm going to skip that. I get a couple of notifications for badges that have been awarded based on that. And now I get to the assessment. So this is going to give me instructions to complete the assessment, and we'll adjust the sections that you need to complete afterwards. And when I do that, I can see I've got general questions on the history of graphic design, thanks to AI that was able to generate those questions for me. As I complete the assessment, I am finished. It's going to give me the feedback. I can see that I scored 100% in this. So I am set. I've passed this. When I continue, it's adjusting all of that result. And as it just refreshed, you saw the history of graphic design disappear from my course. So since I passed out through that pre-assessment, that module is taken out of the course for me. Everything else renumbers. My progress is recalculated based on how many modules are actually assigned to me. I'm also able to then only have to complete these modules. So when those modules are hidden from a user, that adjusts their requirement for what is necessary for them to complete in order to complete the course. So that's a very quick overview of dripping content and adapting content. Caitlin, were there other questions that we can answer?
No, that was the only one that came in, but if you are on the line, you have any additional questions for Mark, please drop them in the Q&A now and we'll get to them. Otherwise, of course, you can always follow up with us separately or through support, and we will get answers to your questions there. Okay, if there are no other questions, then we will wrap up for today. Our coming sessions, we will have another session on the AI that we're building out in 2 weeks from now. That one will be hosted by Graham Glass. Next week, we have a pro tip session on compliance. And later in June, we'll be doing both the pro tips and a live on reporting and using data in learning as well. So keep your eye out for those invitations. And again, we want to thank you so much for joining us today. And thanks for Mark for this great walkthrough on adaptive and dripping content. Have a great day, everyone.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.